Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name is Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Briana, and I don't. And this week we watched Hell House LLC.
What happened that night at the Abaddon Hotel? What is that?
It's everything.
Sarah, have you watched those?
No.
So you have no idea what's on them?
How beautiful is this?
Hell House.
The LLC is important because there were some liability issues.
Just a bit.
Now, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I really was getting the vibe as we were watching this that this is a movie that I really like, and I don't think you liked it at all.
I hate everything about this film.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got. And I get it. I feel like most of the scary movies that you like are ones with, really good character development, really plot driven. And this is just kind of a lot of scares, which are kind of your least favorite part of scary movies, right?
Yeah, the scary parts are definitely my least favorite.
Yeah.
There was no humor in this film. There was no joy. I wrote that it's a scarier version of the Blair Witch Project, but it's not as gritty. It feels produced. It doesn't have that documentary feel that Blair Witch had.
Yeah, I mean, so just to refresh anybody who might not have listened to, other episodes where we talked about it, we watched The Blair Witch and we recorded it, but there was an issue with the recording, so we never got to really release the episode, and we never re-recorded it because we just felt like it wouldn't be, genuine. So maybe it's something we can revisit.
No. It's our lost episode. Every podcast has to have a lost episode.
Yeah, but the consensus here was, hey, we can recognize how important The Blair Witch was to horror, but it's not a film that held up well.
Yeah, but compared to this one, it's cool because it does, like, Blair Witch gives off a documentary feel, or not a documentary feel, a found footage feel that this film just doesn't. It feels like a film trying to be a found footage film. But I will say that I do appreciate the film for what it is. My hatred for it is because I don't actually like what we're doing. I like what we're doing. I don't like scary movies. And this is just a perfect film to illustrate that.
And a weekly reminder that this podcast was Briana's idea. I'm not forcing her to do this. I had accepted that we would never watch scary movies together until she brought this to me. Mm-hmm. So,
yep.
Just don't have too much sympathy for her sitting there talking about how much she hates it, because we didn't have to do this.
All right, well, let's talk about the movie credits. So who created this horrible film? Stephen Cognetti. He was the writer and director. It is his debut feature film.
He also played an off-camera part of the cameraman.
Yeah, a lot of people involved in the film played various other parts.
That's what you do when you have a $20 budget.
Gore Abrams was Paul. Danny Bellini as Alex. Jared Hacker as Tony. Adam Schneider as Andrew, who I never heard the name Andrew through the entire film. I have him written as the name Mac. So I don't know if I made that up or if maybe they called him Mac in the movie and then labeled him as Andrew, or IMDb made a mistake, or I made a mistake. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he goes by Mac. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ryan Jennifer Jones as Sarah. And the summary for the film is, this is a documentary of a haunted house production company made up of 5 friends who, along with a handful of patrons, die in a mysterious tragedy on opening night.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. I would use the word friends kind of loosely there. You kind of get the feeling throughout this movie that these people have been doing this together for a while, and there are definitely tensions like within the group. Like, a couple guys can't stand each other. People are questioning Alex's leadership.
Because he's an asshole and terrible actor.
Yeah. So in part 2, you find out that Alex knew the shady history of this hotel, and that he never even really got permission to do what they were doing there. They go into this whole other backstory where like some demonic force was like luring him there. It wasn't really his fault. It's a whole bunch of blah 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 blah.
Oh,
but
like The Haunting.
yes, kind of, yeah. But it does just kind of, Alex is awful. And that's just really what I'm getting at here.
Summarize.
Yeah.
Tell us the Rotten Tomato score.
Critics 75%, audience 71%. They're pretty closely aligned on this. More people liked it than hated it, which is, I think, not super surprising to me because I understand how this would be a divisive movie, but I also don't think, like, the kind of people that are going to seek out this kind of movie on, like, Shudder and watch it are the kind of people that are predisposed to like it as well. You had never heard of this movie before I brought it to you.
Never.
So I feel like if this were the kind of movie that were released wide with huge marketing and stuff, I feel like those scores would be lower because it would be kind of divisive. But because of the fact that it's kind of like a hidden movie, you're not really going to find it unless you're already going to want to watch it. So.
And what are some of your flesh wounds?
So there isn't much. It was hard to find a lot on the production of this. Mm-hmm. So the one little trivia tidbit I was able to find online was something I don't know if you read as well, but if you did, I'm sure you'd appreciate it. There's one part in the movie where one of the characters is playing this old dusty piano, and he just plays this very simple melody on it. Mm-hmm. And then throughout the course of the movie, that melody is kind of used to haunt the characters.
Yeah.
That melody is the Meow Mix jingle, massively slowed down. Yeah.
Oh. You know what? I read that, but I was like, is that true? And then I didn't Google it any further, and it just didn't sound like it could have been true.
Yeah, I mean, so you might have to edit this out if I sound terrible, but it's like dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I want chicken, I want liver. I read it and I did it in my head and I didn't get it, and then I did it a couple more times. I was like, yeah, I totally hear that. So the other part is just kind of something that I picked up on myself. They kind of touch on the name in the movie, Abaddon. So the hotel, the fake hotel that they're filming at, is called the Abaddon Hotel, and the town that they're in is called Abaddon, New York. Mm-hmm. They touch on that in the movie, about kind of the demonic ties, but that was something that I picked up on immediately. My first watch, I was like, Abaddon, I'm very familiar with that. And so, anybody who knows any biblical mythology or played The Binding of Isaac, which is a video game, might be familiar with that name. So in Revelations, Abaddon is described as destroyer, the angel of the abyss, and as the king of a plague of locusts, resembling horses with crowned human faces, women's hair, lions' teeth, wings, iron breastplates, and a tail with a scorpion stinger that torments for 5 months anyone who does not have the seal of God on their foreheads. So that's the demon Abaddon. The symbolism there kind of leaves the identity open to interpretation. A couple lines of thought are that Abaddon was the Antichrist. There's something called the Jameson Fawcett Brown Bible Commentary, where like 3 Scottish dudes just kind of wrote a commentary on the Bible to kind of delve deeper into things. They identified that angel as Satan. Methodists state Abaddon is an angel not of Satan, but of God, performing his work of destruction. Oh. And the Jehovah's Witnesses also cite Revelation, where the angel is stated to have the key of the abyss, is shown to be a representative of God, concluding that Abaddon is another name for Jesus after his resurrection. So that, to me, regardless of who the biblical Abaddon is or was supposed to be or anything, it's just a name that's very closely associated with like demonic lore and things like that. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, bam, demons. That's where we're going with this. Had you heard that name at all? Were you familiar with that?
Of course not.
No, I don't know.
I don't know anything about the Bible. I did Google stuff, and I have some stuff on it later, which I think might be a little bit different, but still the same. So I'll maybe share it if it's different enough.
Maybe. Yeah.
We'll find out. Well, we already talked about my touch points, which were none. How about you?
Yeah, so I've seen this movie 4 times.
4?
Yeah, this was my 4th time watching it. So I had first...
3 too many.
I had first heard of it on the horror subreddit. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, found footage is one of my favorite genres. There's a lot of stinkers out there, but there's a lot of stinkers in horror in general. And it's just fun. I really enjoy found footage for whatever reason. So when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, I got to watch that. So I watched it. And then I watched it with the girl I was dating at the time, who was also a horror movie fan.
Wow.
And I watched it last year. I was kind of on like a horror movie kick where in my spare time I was just watching a ton of horror movies. I watched it then, and then this was my fourth time. There are 2 sequels, Hell House 2 and Hell House 3. I've seen 2. I have not seen 3 yet. I keep meaning to. I just haven't gotten around to it. They're fine. They're nothing like that's going to blow you away. I think the great thing about this movie for me was that like I went into it without really any expectations. Just kind of like, oh, this could be cool. And I loved it. But when you're going into sequels, it's kind of impossible to go into it with no expectations. So number 2 is fine. I've heard 3 is fine as well. I used to always get this one confused with another found footage movie from around the same time period called Grave Encounters. And that's one we're definitely going to watch for the podcast at some point. So
Great.
Be prepared for that.
I can't wait. All right, well, let's talk about the film. Before the movie started, you told me that it's only 93 minutes long, and I rejoiced. That is as long as any horror movie should be. I prefer 60 minutes, but I feel like, you probably need an extra half an hour.
Yeah, I feel like any movie under 90 minutes is not really trying hard enough.
Yeah, I know, but...
That said, one movie we are going to cover probably soonish is Lights Out, which we talked about, and I remember you were very excited that it was only like 81 minutes long.
Oh, yeah. That's great. And another issue I have with this film, or a issue I have with this film is, at least before I watched it, my biggest fear was... So my biggest fear about going to like haunted houses for Halloween. So those places that you go to where there are actors hired to scare you and everything. I don't like going there because I think that's the perfect place for a murderer to hide. Why isn't someone killed every year in a haunted house?
So there is a movie from like 2018 that's a slasher called Hellfest. That is
there we go.
That exact premise. They go to this like thing that's like an amusement park with like rides and attractions and things, but it's all geared towards horror and being scary and being scared. And somebody puts on a mask and starts killing teenagers
exactly.
Like they do. And that's one we should cover. It's actually a really fun movie. I love that movie. Okay. Spoiler alert, I'll give it a good score.
We can certainly cover that, and I'll just continue to be tortured. It's fine. But obviously this movie isn't about a killer. It's demonic. So not to say my fears were, I don't even know what the word is, relaxed in any way. They were not. But that's what I was most scared about was, what I really think could happen in a fake haunted house. It's also one of those movies, it's very Tarantino, where once I got to the end of the movie, I found that the beginning made sense because I didn't know who that girl was walking into the house. This is basically almost like a found footage film inside of a documentary, which is a little different, I think. Yeah, it's not just simply found footage.
It absolutely is. So, yeah. So before we really go into the story, I guess we should just kind of lay down that framework there. Yeah. So what this movie is it is somebody making a documentary about the events that happened at the Abaddon Hotel in the movie. So the first maybe 15, 20 minutes of the movie are people being interviewed about the events, various experts, people who might have lived or worked in the area, people who were there or, watched videos on YouTube, whatever. And then the bulk of the movie is after they recover these tapes that the people who made the Hell House production made while they were setting everything up.
Right.
And then that's kind of interspersed with little clips of the people from the beginning talking about the events. And I really love that. Like, I think
that's a nice twist on the idea of found footage.
Yeah, there's a very similar film that, again, we'll cover, and I know I've raved to you about before, called Lake Mungo. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy, like, because Blair Witch is great, but it really is, like you said, like, it is just straight footage that somebody found. Mm-hmm. This was more of, like, a documentary, which I really enjoy that format.
Of course, based on how the movie ends, that leads to question of how we're seeing this in the first place, but we'll get there. So that's why initially I was very confused. I was like, who is this girl walking into the house? Like, it was just very confusing, but then it all comes together in the end. You realize, or even before the end, you kind of realize that it's found footage within a documentary. We begin with, like Jason said, these professionals who, there's a journalist, there's an author. The author is not described as having written a book about this event. He is simply an author. And other people who were there, like on opening night. And then we hear from also the person who is doing the documentary, who I assume is some kind of journalist. There's been a lot of digging into this event because it's obviously a small town and it's very mysterious of exactly what happened. But ultimately, no one is able to put the pieces or put the puzzle together to explain what happened. The documentary cuts to a news story. They're on location at a small abandoned hotel that was transformed into a haunted house in Abaddon, New York. Then a woman, the documentary person, she goes into the house. This is where I officially got confused because I didn't quite get what she was doing. And we see footage from a patron, so one of the people who was there that night, a video that was posted on YouTube. It's basically a long line of people waiting to get in. And ultimately, this video captures the chaos. The group goes into the house, and it initially is just looking like a very typical, maybe even kind of cheesy, based on their reactions, haunted house tour. You really can barely see or hear anything, but suddenly a clown runs by in the opposite direction of the crowd. And someone is like, does he work here? They're all very confused.
So I feel like if I'm in a haunted house environment, I'm not going to question that. I'll be like, oh, that was scary. That was part of it. Ha, ha, ha.
Nope, I'm absolutely leaving. If
You wouldn't be there in the first place.
I've been to a haunted house before, okay? Because you know how I get seasonal. I enjoy seasonal things, even if it's going to torture me. Mm-hmm. And I'm a fall girl, basic bitch, hashtag. But if I was in a haunted house where I'm already scared and now someone who I assume is working there is now running in the opposite direction, deuces, out. Follow that clown, out.
See, but it's like you said, this is the perfect place to commit a crime or kill somebody or something because people are just going to assume everything's part of the show. That to me, that's part of the show.
And that's how people die, and I'm not dying.
I would almost definitely die in this because
You're dead.
I would go down into that basement where people are being swallowed up by an open pit in hell.
You're dead.
And I'm going, wow, this is the best haunted house I have ever been to. And then I'm dead. But you know what? Like, I died having fun. So really, did those people who died in this movie, like they got their money's worth. Like that's what you go for.
Yeah, totally.
So.
Worth it, right? Then you can start hearing very intense, very bad screams that to me just don't match the tone of everyone coming in. Like, everyone's walking into a haunted house. They're excited. They're happy. And there's always like screams and sound effects, but you can usually kind of tell like, oh yeah, that's part of the show. These were very bad screams.
Or very good sound effects.
I guess. Someone runs by. It seems like it's someone who works there, not dressed in any costume, but they're kind of wondering. They're like, oh, was that supposed to happen? And they just sum it up as, working out the kinks of opening night. They go down into the basement and there's just full on panic. People are screaming and it's a flood of everyone trying to get out of the basement. People are running, falling, and just saying, we got to go, we got to go. Overall, absolute chaos and confusion. I, watching this, am vomiting at the running. It's worse than Blair Witch in terms of the cameraman holding this camera for this YouTube video. It was awful.
It was realistic, though.
It was realistic, but I was like, if this is how the whole movie is going to be, because again, at this point, I didn't quite know what we were doing. I was like, I'm not going to be able to finish this. But it doesn't last that long. Back to the news footage, there's like an EMT exiting with a body bag on a stretcher. They play a 911 call, and it's just this girl panicking, saying she doesn't know what's happening, but something went into the hall, I think is what she said, or into the wall.
Yeah. So what she was saying is people were getting pulled into the wall.
Right.
Spoiler alert, getting ahead of it. There was like a portal to hell opened up in the wall there, and people were just getting dragged into it by demons and such. Good times.
And the conclusion that the news reports is that a severe malfunction happened. Severe malfunction. The author character, very excited to be on a documentary, also a very bad actor.
See, I liked him. We disagreed on this throughout the course of this movie. I think we had like at least 2 conversations where you made a comment about somebody being a terrible actor, and I was like, I don't know. I didn't see it, and I feel like I usually pick up on that sort of stuff, but I don't know. I didn't think there were any particularly terrible performances in this movie.
There's 2 people to me, the author and Alex, the main guy behind the production company.
Yeah, actually, I will amend that previous statement. There were a couple lines Alex delivered where I was just like, oh, man, But
It was probably the moments that were, I could not find anything about how structured this film was, like how much of it was, what's it called when they're just saying things?
improv.
Improv, thank you. I couldn't find out how much of it was improv, but I feel like the parts that Alex was particularly terrible at were probably the parts that were most improved. I'm obviously not an actor myself. I don't really know anything about acting, but I generally look at acting and think that's probably pretty easy. It can't be that hard. But then when I see someone being bad at it, I'm like, wow, it must be hard because you can be so bad.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that your brain almost doesn't notice if it's really good. You only notice if it's bad.
Yeah.
Definitely, any aspiring or current actors out there, she's not saying your job is easy.
No.
So, but I think I get that. But I think with the documentary guy, I think for me, it's just
The author guy.
Or yes, sorry, I meant the author in the documentary side of things. For me, it's almost like my brain will just ignore any weird patterns or anything there because these are supposed to be normal people delivering lines for a documentary that usually aren't on camera. So like normal people talk weird. You know what I mean?
Guess.
Like,
yeah, that's true.
and I'm guessing why. Like, I'm not saying that that's my active thought process, but I feel like that's probably why I don't really pick up any bad actor vibes from him. I will say there is another person that they continually interview, a journalist, Martin Cliver, who looks exactly like Taran Killam if he were like a stepdad. And so,
He were a stepdad.
yeah, like he'd come home from a date with my mom and be like, "How's it going, champ?" Like he just gives off that vibe. Like he looks just like Taran Killam, but he looks like 10 years older and like he wears tweed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this guy, the journalist, says that there's a gag order on everyone involved, even the police. Unclear by who has placed this gag order, but he says that he went to the hotel for answers. He even went into it and like there's blood on the floor, there's bloody handprints, and he debunks the gas leak explanation. So I guess the quote severe malfunction was also deemed a gas leak. And no one, believed that anyway. He also reported that the basement door was blown off the hinges, but he was too scared to actually go down into the basement. So he pointed the camera down the stairs and just snapped some photos. He said, quote, he's seen a lot, but there was no way he was going down those stairs. Now, I thought it was weird when he said that the basement door was blown off the hinges because, when this film hits the high point of, the climax of everything, we see like the portal opening and everyone going to the basement and then everyone exiting the basement. There is no scene where a door is blown off the hinges. Like that never happens. So it's true, we did not miss that, but that was part of an additional 8 minutes of the film that were ultimately cut due to budgetary reasons. However, it is available in the director's cut of the film. There's extra footage of exactly what is happening in the basement, including an explosive opening of the portal, that is what messes up the basement door. It also helps to explain ultimately where the bodies go. So like, I guess you maybe see people's bodies getting pulled either into the portal or like into the walls and stuff like that.
We should have watched that.
Nope. Did not need 8 more minutes. So I didn't like this part when he's like sneaking around the house. This entire film, I was just so nervous of something popping out at any given moment. And, looking at the photos, I thought we might see something in the photos. I thought they might do that thing where he takes a picture, right? And then you look at the photo and that's where you see the scary thing in the photo, which I also hate that kind of stuff. Like those BuzzFeed articles where they'll show like this disturbing photo. Like, nope, that will haunt me for weeks. The big break of this documentary, though, is Sarah Havill. She's a member of Hell House LLC, and she's agreed to be interviewed. She's not been heard from since the tragedy, and they sit her down in a room and just start asking her questions. The first one being where she's been, and she says that she's been with family and is in a better place now, which is an interesting statement that we'll get back to later.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of those, like, paper thin.
What's it called? Easter eggs.
Yeah. It's just, she's in a better place now. Is there any other realm of our lives where we use that exact phrase?
But I did not give it a second thought at all at the time. I was like, okay, whatever. She explains that keeping everything quiet about what really happened was the smart thing to do because if they knew what really happened, it would have been hard for people to deal with. like they used to say about aliens. So the interviewer asks what really happened. And she pulls out a bag and says everything that went on in the house is on these tapes. She explains that she got to it before the police did and she purposely kept it from them, but she hasn't watched it herself. The footage is from August 23rd, 2009 to October 9th, 2009.
Yeah, and they ask, why didn't you give this footage to the police? And she just goes, you'll see.
Oh. The footage starts with them in the car just kind of shooting the shit, which is very Blair Witch, like, oh, we're just going on this exciting adventure.
During this conversation, they make a reference to the movie Hitch.
Oh, yeah.
And you looked at me and you went, was Hitch even out in 2009? And I told you it was out in 2005. And I swear to God, you aged 20 years in front of my eyes when you heard that news. It shattered your entire reality.
That's just weird to me that the year after I graduated high school is when Hitch came out.
It's weird to me that you measure any milestone relative to when Hitch came out.
Well, I'm a big Hitch fan. I love Kevin James. Is he in that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in that. He's trying to win over the love of supermodel Allegra Cole. Have you ever even seen it? Fake Hitch fan over here.
Alex and Mac are fighting outside. Paul is the one recording. Sarah's the only woman, and Alex is her boyfriend. They arrive at the hotel, and they start, fooling around with a bunch of junk outside. And immediately, I'm just confused as to how they have access to the hotel. Did they rent it? Did they buy it? Just taking it over, knowing that it's abandoned? These questions are never answered. Sarah asks why it's closed, and Alex says, I don't know, baby, okay? It's just history. Immediately no one is acting at this point. Just immediately no. It's just not good, but it's fine. They explore the space. They find a wine room, and the hotel dining area is in disarray. Someone, maybe Paul, I don't know. He's like, oh, we should stay here tonight. And they're all like, no.
Oh, yeah. During this and later when Sarah says they started sleeping in the hotel after they got the electricity on, you were abusing your keyboard. You were typing so furiously.
Well, because I was like, you idiot. Why would we stay here? That's so stupid. And then I find out later that they are staying there. They just had to get the electricity running. I was like, what the actual fuck? No. I quit. I quit the company.
And also, though, okay, I know Alex is a terrible actor, and I also know that his character is not a good person, but during this scene, he was 100% right. Everyone else on the team is giving him crap about how run down and crappy this place looks. That's the point.
Yeah.
That is so much of your work done for you. This is a perfect location for a haunted house. Are you kidding me?
They're actually so stupid because it's already just the way it looks in of itself as an abandoned house, whatever. But he should have told them the haunted backstory of this, because that's even guaranteeing a haunted house at a haunted house. Yeah, people are going to come to that. Yeah. Not me, but people are coming.
I'd go.
Exactly. So that's an immediate implicit draw that's just going to rack in the cash. Or rake in the cash. Not rack.
Rake, yeah.
They explore the attic, and there's a chain hanging from the ceiling. Their reaction is just, that's weird. But I do know that this will come back to haunt us for sure. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, what, doesn't everybody have some attic chains?
Tony, one of the other guys, he has a walkie-talkie to stay in touch with the rest of the group while he's in the attic, and it gets all staticky and it freaks them out. Then they jump when the rest of the group actually calls through. Fake jump scares, effective on me only. The camera pans around, and we see a dark hooded figure.
Yeah, and you gave the little scream that you let out when you saw this hooded figure was I wrote here half-hearted. You were like, oh, I should scream at that, but you didn't really seem that scared. You were just like, don't like that.
Well, I wasn't expecting it because they already just did a jump scare, and they didn't react to it either because I guess they didn't see it. The camera person never sees what they're actually looking at in movies. Why, in these kinds of movies, why does that happen? They're rarely seeing what their eye is actually looking at. So anyway, hate it. We're leaving. Bye. They go into the basement. And my first question is, why are they going into the basement? But the plan is to really just use the full space of the house.
Yeah, makes sense.
And Alex is very excited about this particular space.
So they talk about their plans for what they want to do with this, and they start talking about clowns. And they talk about they want to put like a bunch of clown figures down there because clowns are creepy, which is 100% accurate. My issue is that he uses the phrase, as many clowns as we can fit, which just sounds like a nightmare I've had. Like,
And also they had 3. They could have fit 30.
That's true. That's true. I didn't think about that part. I guess he didn't really live up to his dream there.
Yeah. Sarah finds a bunch of Bibles, like they're all just kind of scattered about the floor, and it unsettles them, but Alex doesn't care. He's like, guys, relax. It's a hotel. And while that does make sense, yes, of course there's Bibles in a hotel. It's fucking creepy and weird that they're just strewn about in the basement.
Yeah, and there was also like a pentagram drawn on the wall too.
Yes, to fully miss that. But
Yeah.
there is a pentagram. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, Bibles are inherently creepy. Like, we have talked about this before, you and I, and multiple times on this podcast. Like, religion's creepy. Like, no offense to anybody who's religious. I just mean, like, you know, a lot of the concepts, a lot of the buildings are just creepy.
Yeah, and it's not like a Bible in a drawer in a Marriott is going to scare me, but in the right context, creepy basement, pentagram, yeah, I'm scared of the Bible that's around too.
Yeah.
That just fully adds to it. Back to the interview, Sarah explains that it took them a week to get the electricity going, and that's when they started staying at the hotel. Now, I thought they were some kind of professionals, so why did it take them a week to get the electricity going? But maybe they're not electrician professionals. They're just rig it up to make it work professionals.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe I got. You know, they're used to taking, they probably usually rent out not abandoned places, you know, the kind of places that also become spirit Halloween stores.
Yeah.
But not those, because this is around the same time of year. But
Yeah.
But you know, that's kind of the impression I got, but they never really, you know, expand on that.
Right. There's more footage of them hanging out and having fun. They're at the bar, and Sarah's face is just constantly looking at the camera like, I can't believe this is my life working with these 4 bros. Oh my God, which is kind of funny. They laugh a lot and talk about other haunted houses that they've done, like, in the past. They've definitely done this, like, exclusively in New York City, and they decided to go upstate. But Alex is really the one who made the decision. So he's really the forerunner of this production company. He does, like, a speech or a toast, and he's excited to, like, keep the business fresh. And Abaddon is apparently a town that appreciates Halloween, so it's a good place to be doing this. Next, they've got cameras, like, for the event all set up, and they're able to get cameras set up everywhere but in the basement because the walls are too thick. There was, like, a lot of conversation about the basement and not being able to get cameras set up. So I was wondering, are they not functioning? Like, are they not able to make them function because that's obviously the main portal space, so all that electricity stuff just doesn't work in the basement? Or is it really just that, like, they couldn't get the angles right? Kind of unclear.
I mean, I definitely took it as it was something supernatural preventing the cameras from working, but they probably, you know, obviously, maybe you would immediately go to ghosts.
Of course.
But they were probably, you know, just like, oh, I'm sure it's some tech issue. Like, I would have thought the signal could get through the basement, but guess it doesn't,
Yeah.
you know?
So they decide, okay, we have to get some kind of security down there. So the cameras are really just, obviously, while the I keep calling it an open house, a haunted house. While the haunted house is happening, they're going to be monitoring everything on cameras for security and all that stuff. And the plan is to have, you know, a half-naked girl downstairs in the basement. So they need some kind of security in case someone decides to be a pervert to the half-naked girl.
Because she is also chained up.
Yeah.
So they're doing like a sacrifice scene here. They're using basically like what's already there, and they're chaining this girl to the wall as a sacrifice to, you know, demons or whatever scares you. They actually are chaining her to the wall.
Yeah.
So that's why they want somebody down there just in case somebody gets a little handsy, because she can't fight back.
Great. So they decide they'll hire a bodyguard, and he'll be dressed like a clown, and that's their fix for the security. Next, they're, like, hanging a prop, and they usually do movable props, they say, but they couldn't do that for some reason. Again, I don't think it was really explained. And it's got this wig. It almost looks like maybe the Ring girl to me, because she's got that black stringy hair, and he pats it on the head and is like, she'll be scary soon. And we both said, you already did it. She's already quite scary.
Yeah, I mean, she was just hanging there. Like, that's pretty creepy. Sometimes too much is too much.
Right. So again, they're just kind of playing around. Paul sets down the camera and he plays the piano next to a prop on the bench that he's named Hector. And this is where he's playing what is the Meow Mix song?
Meow Mix, yeah.
And at the end, he jokes around pressing the keys, messing up the song, and blames it on Hector as like a joke.
Yeah, there's no way that song comes back in a creepy moment, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Later, he's in his room on the mattress on the floor talking to the camera. As he talks, giving an update on how the project is going, it's fully dark in the background and someone walks in behind him, which he doesn't notice. And then he does realize it, probably like just feeling like someone is behind him. The figure has long hair, so he thinks it's Sarah. Now, my question is it Sarah? Because later Sarah is sleepwalking. So is that already happening, or is it just not Sarah?
So 2 things. Before I answer your question, I just want to, as I like to do in these moments, take our listeners through your reactions to these events.
Please.
Paul is laying on the bed. He's kind of like laying on his stomach, looking into the camera. The door is in the frame behind him. As this figure walks into the room, you immediately yell, "Oh, fuck off."
Yes.
And as he continues talking, you're just increasingly agitated that he isn't noticing it.
Yeah.
And then he turns and he says like, "Oh, hey, Sarah, what are you doing there?" And it like walks away.
He says, "You okay, dude?"
Yeah. And you just went, "Oh my God. Oh my God." And then that was it. I don't believe it was Sarah. So there is a scene later on where Paul has an encounter with a vaguely female-looking apparition.
Yes.
And that's not Sarah. So I just
God,
assumed that it was that thing or person or, spirit.
And just the way it's walking, it's just doing that really perfect, slow walk. And it's
Shamble.
It's almost worse when they don't do anything to you. That's almost more unsettling than when they do something to you.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you there. It is absolutely worse to have something done to you than to have something not done to you. And I don't think that's a controversial opinion.
Anyway, Paul is perverted and also funny / the star of this film. I love Paul the most. I thought I hated him the most, other than Alex and his bad acting. But I actually love Paul.
Paul is absolutely like, he's that friend that you like love hanging out with, but you often have to like apologize to your other friends for his behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, we love Paul.
He turns back to the camera and he's like, "That was fucking weird." And he starts talking about how like hot Sarah is and like she's the only girl here, but Alex doesn't like to share. So that is, to sum up Paul, this scene perfectly sums him up. Like, funny and
misogynistic.
Yes.
But we love Paul. We love Paul.
I would like to say, I wrote here, typing out the details of this scene reignited my scares, so that's fun. And that's true. Even just talking about it right now, and even about talking about what happens later, I had the full, like, my whole body just shook.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happens later is one of my favorite scares that we've really gone through on this podcast.
And it's my least favorite. Weird.
Yeah, well, because I mean, it was probably scared you more than most of the stuff we've done on the podcast, right? Yeah, I barely watched it. So I think one thing that's worth noting, this genre for you is challenging because anytime we watch a movie, not even necessarily a horror movie, but you always struggle with point of view shots.
Yep.
Like when you have limited view of the periphery, when you can't see the full scene, that always makes you anxious, even if it's a scene that's not even supposed to make you anxious. We've talked about this before.
It's almost like claustrophobia or something. Like, I can't see, it doesn't actually even make sense. I can fully see what's happening because it is point of view. You're fully seeing everything. But there's no control, I guess, because
you can't turn your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm getting chills talking about it, but it's like, it's almost like claustrophobia for me. It's just, I feel like I can't control what's happening and I'm going to die.
Do you know what those chills are? That is loving a horror movie.
No. The next morning, Paul, holding the camera, sneaks in on Sarah and Alex talking in their bedroom, and she's laying on her stomach and in her underwear, so it's like a cute little butt shot. And Alex yells at him for barging in, and he's all like, dude, no, I'm just trying to tell you that the other actors are here. There's only 3 of them, which doesn't seem like enough. Like 3 actors for the entire open house.
Yeah, and one of them's a security guard. So,
Right. Yeah. And one of them's simply a greeter. And then the other one is tied up. So there's just like not really a lot of props, I guess. Back to the journalist. He says that he got one police officer to talk, and he was one who had been like first on the scene. And he reported that the first body he found was one of the Hell House workers, a male, and his throat was slit, and it was clearly self-inflicted.
I also wrote here, I can't unsee stepdad Taryn kill him. It's uncanny.
I didn't notice that at all.
Oh my God. You just go back and look at a screenshot or something, and it's insane.
He also talks about the, quote, strange case of Joey Scheffler, who made it out alive, but we all know how that ended. So we see a black screen with words explaining that Joey refused to talk about what he saw and was found dead in his bedroom 9 days later. He had hung himself. Joey is the clown that we saw in the footage running opposite everyone else, and he's the one who was supposed to be the security guard in the basement.
Here's my only issue with this movie. My only issue with the entire movie.
Okay, wow.
Joey's a big fella.
Yeah.
How's he gonna hang himself?
I think it can still be done. But
sure.
I don't know that we have to work out the mechanics of it.
Well, I'm sure it can still be done. I just feel like when you say somebody hung themselves, it evokes an image of somebody just like hanging from a ceiling fan with a noose around their neck. Mm-hmm. That would not work for our friend Joey. And that's fine. There's no shame in that. But if I'm making this movie, I'm going to go with something that doesn't make
People
me question things. Yeah. I mean, you just talked about how somebody was found having a self-inflicted throat cut. Same thing. He was found in his own apartment 3 weeks later. He cut his own throat.
It actually would have been better if it was also like unexplainable, like not like he hung himself, but like
he just died.
And as though like whatever happened here continued happening, you know?
Like the doctors couldn't find any trace of trauma or poison or anything. His heart just stopped.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
That's good. We should write a movie.
Clearly. Alex is talking to the younger woman who will be playing the, damsel in distress character.
And I'm getting such sleazeball vibes from Alex here. It's like a casting couch where
fully. He's just like trying to comfort her, and she's like, but why am I naked?
It's like,
he's like,
don't worry, you want the job or not, baby?
You have to be naked.
Look, this could be your big break. Don't mess it up by being a prude.
Exactly.
No, you can call me Harvey Weinstein. It's okay.
But then Paul just adds to it, coming over with the camera. Although
she's digging Paul.
Yeah, so he like flirts with her, and it's annoying Alex. And is it annoying Alex because it's messing up his game, even though he's dating Sarah? Or is he just in general annoyed? But she's laughing at Paul and is relaxed and comforted by him, and is clearly actually not relaxed or comforted by whatever Alex is saying.
Yeah, again, it's because Paul is charming. The misogynist he might be.
The funny, charming pervert. She asks why they're filming this whole thing, and Alex is just like, oh, it's just for us, to document what we're doing. But Paul at the same time says, we're looking for ghosts, kind of like joking. And she goes, oh, so then you've heard the history. And Paul is kind of like, huh? And Alex tries to brush it away and like make her stop talking. But she says that the owner had hung himself and things kept happening to guests, which forced them to shut down the hotel. She says she doesn't really know any more details, but again, Alex is just trying to shut that down. There are constantly things being brought to Alex's attention, and for a reason that is only alluded to and never simply explained, he shuts it all down very defensively and very aggressively. So I had to figure this out. According to IMDb, in Hell House 2, like you kind of said already, which I do hope I never have to see, Alex actually knows the hotel's history, and that's why he's trying to constantly shut everything down whenever the spooky stuff is talked about or actually happens. But again, I think that's confusing because I do think the perception of a truly haunted place would be more of a draw. And I feel like these people who work in this life would would not be so turned off by that they wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, and I also think it's worth mentioning a little later in the movie, you kind of find out that they're having big money issues.
But you don't really. They say things, but they don't say what it is.
Right, but I mean,
you guess
that's heavily
that's what's
implied,
happening.
though. It is heavily implied.
And I think that's why they're staying at the place instead of staying at a hotel. And
Exactly.
that's also probably why he didn't want to say anything, because yeah, you might be cool with a place being haunted, but are you cool with staying in a place that might be haunted? No.
Exactly. Well, and that's what I'm getting at is, so that's also kind of a reason for him to just be so guarded about this, because if this, for literally any reason, doesn't work out, they're probably fucked. Like, not only is their business over, but he can't even pay his other partners what they're owed for the work they've already done.
Yeah.
So, I get him being a little guarded about that, but like you said, I think it would make it more interesting.
And I just think it should have been more explicitly stated, because I found it to be so confusing until a particular scene comes later where I'm like, okay, I guess it's financial. But again, it is never just simply said. It sounds like you're going to learn later, and we never do. So again, I think that's almost some improv conversations happening that don't ever fully explain it, and maybe should have. But to further explain the history of the hotel, we return to the author character of the documentary, and it begins with the owner, Andrew Tully. The journalist assumes that these guys had no idea about Tully or the missing guests. So the rumors are that Tully was the head of a cult, and he opened the hotel in Abaddon because of the name, which is meaning the guardian of hell. So what I found about it was that in Hebrew, did you talk about Hebrew? Okay. In Hebrew, Abaddon means destruction or doom, and in Greek, the equivalent is Apollyon, meaning destroyer. In the Bible, it's a place of destruction and an archangel of the abyss. And in the Hebrew Bible, it references a bottomless pit, often appearing alongside the place of Sheol.
Sheol, yeah, that's like the
realm of the dead.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Greek realm of the dead, where it's like it's an underworld, but it's not purely for punishment of sinners. Just kind of everyone goes there.
Yeah. So that to me gives, the whole idea of like a bottomless pit and a portal opening in the floor. Same vibes there. They mentioned that the first disappearance, though no other disappearances are discussed, was a woman and daughter who had stayed at the hotel. And then when questioned by the police, Tully was able to produce records of their departure. Despite that, though, it did kill business, and he hung himself in the dining room in 1989. So this isn't even like that old.
Great album.
Truly. Can't wait for Taylor's version. Back to the crew, they're working on the clown dummies, and they're talking about how this one particular mask is really good and shouldn't be wasted on something that isn't going to move. And my reaction is that going to move?
Yeah.
Future Briana says yes.
Yeah, that, like, anytime in a horror movie they hammer home like how particularly something cannot happen, you can be sure that thing will happen later.
And they're correct. This mask is really good and is fully wasted on something that's not moving.
Well, it does move, so it's fine.
It's not fine, though. Ugh. At night, Paul hears a strange noise, so he gets up to investigate. Grabs his camera first, of course, the natural thing to do. Everyone but Alex also wakes up because of the noise. But Alex wakes up, he says, because they're making noise. I don't believe you. The sound was apparently like a scream, but we don't hear anything, right? We don't hear the scream.
Yeah, I don't think we heard anything. Which would make sense because Paul wouldn't have been recording before he woke up.
Yeah. But we do hear creaking on the stairs. And so Paul points the camera down the stairs to the pitch blackness, and there's nothing. Hated it. And that's it. We're done. We meet Joey the clown. Paul is going around the house looking at the setup and saying how great it all is. He's just kind of like, again, documenting the progress. And he's also looking for Tony. This is a very long point of view scene through essentially the entire open house and what they've created thus far. It was really stressful, but also the house itself. Did you find the layout to be really confusing?
Yeah, it's definitely pretty confusing.
So I felt that through the entire film. And apparently it was filmed at the Waldorf Hotel in Layton, Pennsylvania. It's run by Angie Moyer, who served as the film's set designer. And it also functions as an actual haunted house attraction that took over an abandoned hotel, which I went to their website. It is currently called the Waldorf Estate of Fear.
Would you go there with me?
No.
Didn't think so.
Danny Bellini, though, who played Alex, he said that, quote, working in that hotel was a very creepy experience. It's like a maze. We were sometimes genuinely lost while trying to remember our lines.
And that is pretty cool. Like, I feel like a lot of times in movies or TV shows, areas can get confusing because they're not real, because they're sets that are laid out and not consistent.
Like The Shining.
Exactly. But this is a real place.
Yeah. And we're getting point of view camera and they're just walking. And I'm like, where are we? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Which is like really unsettling.
Yeah, it makes it creepier. I love it.
Paul is behind the camera walking through the house. This was extremely unpleasant and stressful for me because he's passing the props. And they're just props, but I'm already so on edge. I already think that any prop in a fake haunted house is going to grab me. So, and in fact, my only comfort in going to these haunted houses is that they're not allowed to touch you. These things, I assume, are just going to like reach out and grab Paul at any moment. And he reaches the basement door, and the dummy with the mask, the one that's too good to not move, is standing there at the basement door, facing the steps. He jokes saying, "Oh, what are you looking at?" and looks down the stairs. So the camera goes from the dummy down the stairs.
So then the dummy is behind the camera.
Right. And then it goes back to the dummy, whose head has now turned and is facing Paul / the camera.
Yeah, and that was another thing that you did not enjoy.
Completely. But he thinks it's Tony dressed up, so he kind of laughs it off and he's like, "Good one, ma'am." Then he walks back to the group. He had passed like everyone else earlier, and Tony is there.
What?
And he freaks out.
But if you're here, then that means...
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And so then he runs back to the door. The dummy is gone.
Of course it is.
He goes into the basement, turns on the lights to find the 3 dummies, including the one that was just at the top of the stairs, propped up against the wall, unmoving, just as they should be. He even touches the head of it and everything. And he yells back up at the guys.
For me, this is the point where I leave. 100%. I just get the fuck out of there.
Yep.
Because, like, you've got this on camera. Like, you're not like, oh, maybe I saw it wrong, maybe, you know, whatever. Like, you have this on camera.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Get the fuck out of there, man.
Which they then watch. And I was happy with. I was like, oh, they're going to watch. They're acknowledging this and they're watching the footage. Neat.
To be fair, though, like, Paul is, as we've covered, kind of a douche, even though we love him.
Yeah.
So this definitely would be in character for Paul to, like, set this up. You know, like, we don't know how, but that's part of the prank.
Yeah, but I feel like there's got to be at some point. I just hate that. Like, you have to believe people at some point, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if, you know, all of these people professionally scare people for a living.
Yeah, that's true.
So it does kind of add that layer of, like, can we take this at face value?
But so initially they watch the footage, and other than Alex, their reaction is appropriate. They're like, what the fuck? But then Paul starts blaming Tony. Because I guess Tony's the one who designed the things, right?
Yeah.
Like, all their jobs are kind of, like, unclear. And who's doing what. But it seems like Tony designs these props and is in charge of it. So, like, Paul's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what are you doing?
Well, he blamed Tony because earlier, while he was walking through the house, he asked where Tony was. When he was talking to everyone else, he hadn't seen Tony. So he saw everyone but Tony. So he was like, well, that has to be Tony. And then he went back to where everyone was, and Tony was back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They argue, but ultimately it's just like, whatever. Again, I'm leaving. Like, I'm leaving the company.
Yeah.
We don't have to be friends anymore. Bye.
I don't blame them for not trusting Paul, and I don't blame Paul for not trusting them. But if I'm Paul, if I saw that, if I recorded it, deuces. I'm out.
So, fun fact, Danny, the one who played Alex, and Jared, the one who played Tony, they were the people who actually wore this when it did have to move.
Yeah, I read that the dummies that they had couldn't stand on their own.
Yeah. In another shot, they're outside working on props, and the camera pans to Sarah, who is just like staring at this random statue. She's far off enough that you can't see her expression, but it seems like they're setting up one of those paranormal things where, like, one character is becoming more affected by what's going on than others.
And of course it's the woman.
It's always the
because
woman.
Her period syncs up with the moon, which is involved with ghosts or something.
Of course.
Yeah.
Your period does have to do with the moon, though. That's true.
I know. That's why I made the joke.
Paul calls out to her and she looks over. She kind of smiles and then like skips off. I think this whole bit was improv. It just came off as bad.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't like this bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, they're doing a test run and Paul has the camera attached to his head. Oh, fuck this part. Okay. So everyone is like where they're supposed to be if this was truly opening night. So there's people like two of them are watching on camera and other people are elsewhere. And they put on the strobe lights and I'm immediately stressed because the strobe lights, it's too much. Like I'm overstimulated. He's standing there and in the flash, so as the light flashes, you can see a hooded figure. It gets closer and he calls out on the walkie-talkie asking, how many freaks do we have? And they answer back 3, which you can clearly see even before that there are 3 propped appropriately. And now there's this 4th thing that's there sometimes. He freaks out asking to be let out. He like runs to some door that's blocked off and can't be opened seemingly from his side. So it gets opened or he busts through it and he actually throws up, which supposedly was real. I don't really know why.
Yeah, I read that too, that he threw up for real, that wasn't scripted. Maybe it was just the strobe lights just affected him.
Yeah. Outside, Alex and Paul argue. Paul says we all saw the same thing, but Alex doesn't want the actors hearing it. It's a bad acting scene for Alex. Back to the author, he says that Alex created the company. The rest were loyal to him, and he was blinded by what he created. I wrote that this was a weak-ass attempt to explain his behavior.
I wrote during this scene that you made it a point to point out that this guy's a bad actor.
Yeah.
I said I don't see it, and maybe I'm just so used to like terrible performances in horror films that anything above a baseline of just absolutely awful is good to me. You know, and that's why I think our difference is there. The strobe
So you have
shot,
low standards.
Exactly, I have very low standards. The strobe shot, I like when it happens, but I dislike when they go through the footage. They kind of like go through the footage again and they show you stills of the thing there. And
hate it.
I don't like that. I think this is a scenario, especially when you're working on a constrained budget, where less is more. You know, like we already saw something creepy there. We already saw this hooded figure there. It is almost certain that there's nothing you can show us, and a still shot of that is going to be creepier than seeing it happen.
Right. But if you think about this being a documentary, that's exactly what they would do. You would watch that footage, and then you, as the viewer, you're like, wait, what am I supposed to be looking at? What did I see? What did I miss? And then they would go back and be like, bam, bam, like you see, this is what you're looking at.
That's a really good, fair point. I'm looking at it from a horror movie perspective, but you're right. It is a quote unquote documentary, so good catch.
Aha. Paul wakes up again hearing noises. So this is like the third or the second time they've woken up hearing noises. Still has plenty of time and wherewithal to turn on that camera, though. Thank God. He finds the clown standing at the bottom of the stairs.
And this elicited another F-bomb for you.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Absolutely.
You were so mad.
I don't know why that phrase is my go-to for this entire film, but it was.
It's not just this film. That is something you commonly yell when you're scared.
Because that's what I wanted to do. Fuck off and get away from me. Don't be in my face right now. Tony is awake too. He actually goes down the stairs and touches the head. It's clearly a mannequin, and he says that he'll put it back. They go to the main area to return the clown, where they find Sarah. So they're basically walking on like the main level right now where all the rooms are. They find Sarah. She's staring at a wall and talking in what sounds like a foreign language, or maybe it's supposed to be like tongues or something like that, and not acknowledging them. Tony grabs her and she almost like wakes up as like you woke up a sleepwalker, and she freaks out.
So I read the line she's like uttering here, the tongues that she's speaking, is a line she says later in the movie, but reversed.
Yeah. She's crying and screaming and still kind of acting like there's something there on the wall. Like she's looking at it like she's seeing something that she's scared of. Again, probably just like improv stuff. Tony's hugging her and comforting her. Meanwhile, the clown, gone. Nope, bye, leaving the house, goodbye. A grandfather clock chimes loudly. Never been scared by a grandfather clock, but now I am.
Really? I would have thought that grandfather's clocks would just be scary to you.
No, not implicitly. That freaks them out. Then there's like a dinner table fully set with candles, and that scares them. And Paul turns around and the clown is there. Sarah runs by it. I can't believe she just fucking runs by it. And not even by it. I would say it's blocking the stairs, and she like sweeps herself by it to go up the stairs.
Honestly, you gotta love that courage. Like, you do what you gotta do, you know?
That cuts the scene. So we don't really know what happens after that. But what happens the next morning is outside, Alex is like hugging Sarah. And we don't see Sarah again for a while.
Yeah, I think they talk about her like not doing well. Like, she's not doing good after, you know, what happened there. So I think it's just sort of her like laying in bed. And,
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Paul is in the bedroom. Oh, okay.
Do you want me to take this one?
Go ahead.
Okay. So Paul is in bed. And so
It's 3 days until opening.
yes, 3 days until opening. Now remind me, is he this starts off with him asleep, right?
No, he's just
Okay.
it's like a diary. He's
Okay.
he's just talking about how it's friggin' shitty and crazy here right now. Tony says they have no business being there, but Alex is more confident than ever.
Yeah.
Sarah doesn't look good, and she usually does. That's what he says.
I love Paul.
And then he says, "That's all for me. Sleep sweet," and turns off the camera.
Yeah.
And now you can go.
Yeah, see, this is where I was going to pick up from. Okay.
But I will like to just say here, I wrote that Paul is the best actor of the bunch. The tension he held in this scene with the long pauses in that bit that I just said is really good. This is until I'm traumatized by this scene, this is a very good scene. Like, he is great in this. You can really feel the weight of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Paul is kind of the proxy for the audience during this whole movie.
Yeah.
You get that, you know, and it really, he does a great job. And you're right. I think he's the best actor in the movie. But yeah, so Paul in bed, middle of the night, wakes up, flicks on the camera, and on the ground, so his bed is like a mattress on the floor. And again, sort of before, the door is behind him, and then there's a wall running along the opposite side of the room. There is a figure just sitting there. She is sitting, it's a female-looking figure. She is sitting with her back to the wall, her legs straight out in front of her, just sitting there.
Unwell. Looking unwell.
Yeah. And Paul doesn't really notice right away.
Yeah, it's unclear actually even why he wakes up.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like you said before, he could just feel that presence, you know, in the room. So he eventually notices her, gets very scared, as anybody would, and hides under the covers.
Which I love. So real. Like,
You love, but you were also pretty upset about it at the time. You're like, he's hiding under the covers?
because I knew how this scene was playing out. I knew
Yeah.
what was going to happen here, which I hate. But I appreciated, like, that's exactly what I would do. It's the only option.
Yeah. And so let's put this in less traumatizing terms for you.
No, keep it going. It's fine.
Oh, I mean for the listeners. I mean for our, yeah. If you've ever played with a kitten, right? And it's stalking you from around a corner.
Yeah.
And then you
scary.
like look out at the kitten and it's like standing very still. And then you look back so you can't see the kitten anymore. And then you look back and it's standing still, but it's a few feet closer.
Yeah.
And then you look back around the corner so you can't see the kitten anymore. And then you look back and he's closer, but he's still standing still. Paul basically plays this game with the ghost of a dead woman. And at the last peak, he opens the covers. Her face is right there, just right in the camera, right on him. And that's it.
But describe it, because I didn't see it. So, like, is it scary? Like, the first time you saw this.
It's unsettling. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know how to describe it. It looks like you would expect somebody if they were like, we're going to put this woman in ghost makeup. You know, it's sort of like that Exorcist
But was it
face.
effective for you? Like,
Oh,
you-
absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
It creep me the hell out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I wrote here, I would say this scene is probably the most rattled I've seen you during the entire time we've done this podcast.
Yeah, other than whatever movie made me cry randomly.
That was The Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
And that's actually, I mentioned The Lodge came close.
I think I did almost cry watching this movie.
So this scene, as this is unfolding, like right after the first time, like right after Paul goes under the covers, you immediately covered your eyes. Like, I can't watch it. You have to tell me what's happening.
Yeah.
Like you tapped out on this really
Fully.
early.
Yep. Boundaries.
A reminder, this entire podcast was your idea. just again, not rubbing that in or trying to say this is your fault. I just want to make sure our listeners are aware.
Yeah.
As we talk about how traumatized you are.
Listen, the experiment is working, okay? It's not working while I watch the movies, and it's not working the night that we watch the movies, but it is working. Like, I'm scared talking about these little moments, and will I be scared again probably tonight because we're like reigniting things after some time? Yeah, but it's not going to carry on me like I thought it would for the rest of my life before I started watching scary movies. So what we're doing here is great work for my brain. It's working.
I'm glad to hear it.
But nonetheless, you are correct. I fully set the boundary at this point where it's like, I cannot handle this scene. I know what's going to happen. So I'm just simply not going to watch. And probably if it had been filmed differently, well, I feel like this kind of scene is always a point of view scene, right? Anytime this trick is played, it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
So I'll probably always be the one that can't see that. But it goes back to that whole idea of like, I can't control what I'm seeing right now. So I simply will not see it. And that is that. But again, I think this scene was really good and really effective. Like, I don't ever want to see it, but for the genre that we're in, this was great, right? Would you say?
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great scene. Yeah. I mean, it is not the most original scene, but you don't have to be original if you do it well. And this was well done for me.
And I think more than the face just being there, it basically attacks him because the camera does go out, goes to static.
Yeah, there's like shaking and there's like maybe a but yeah.
In the next scene, Tony is manning the camera because Paul is gone. Again, it was definitely more than just her face being there. Paul is gone. All but Alex are freaking out over that. Alex decides to call him. The phone rings, it picks up, and it's quiet. Then this like insane loud shriek happens. So surprising that he drops the phone. Alex just says, I don't know what that was, and like storms off. That night, Tony and Mac awake because someone is playing the piano. And they assume it's Paul.
I want chicken. I want liver.
Exactly, because it's the same song that he was playing with the dummy Hector. When they reach the piano room, there's no one there except Hector. It's playing exactly the way that he played it, including the fake mess up at the end, like a recording, except it's not. Then they hear screaming and a banging noise that sounds very faint, like it's coming from behind a door or behind a wall. They go searching through the house, eventually ending up in the basement where they simply refuse to turn on a light, and they call for Paul. They see the clowns. They're facing forward, as they should. Mac starts digging behind stuff, maybe like under the stairs or something. I don't quite know. And Tony follows, with the camera view. So we're just kind of watching Mac dig through a bunch of stuff. And when he pans back to the clowns, they're all looking in their direction, which is wrong. So all of the clowns' heads are now moving.
And as we clarified earlier, this clown's head, these mannequin heads do not move.
Right.
Yeah, or at least one of them was unable to.
Tony freaks out. Mac tries to calm him down, but he didn't see what's happening. And he asks him, do you believe in ghosts? And Tony says yes, like unequivocally yes. And Mac says, well, I don't. It's going to be fine when we go out there. And when they do, their heads are turned back correctly. Mac says that Paul is fucking with them. So this was just like a funny conversation to me. Again, I feel like it was some kind of improv thing where Mac just decided to ask that question and Tony decided to say yes. It was just a little strange and funny to me. Suddenly they find Paul. He's sitting against one of the walls and Mac yells at him. Paul's eyes are wide open and he looks severe. Like he doesn't look right.
He looks like he's not there.
Yeah. And Alex now joins them in the basement. Tony's talking about how the clown heads moved and he's essentially having a long overdue breakdown and declares that he's quitting.
This conversation with Mac and Tony and then eventually Alex, this is also a moment for me that takes a little away from the movie because you see Alex can at least be explained away by what we know of him trying to hide the nature of the house and things like that. But as far as Mac goes, like this is just a very cliched horror movie moment where people are denying that things are going on in the face of overwhelming evidence.
Yeah.
Like you can't, like it's almost a joke now in modern horror movies about, you know, the dad who refuses to move out of the new house because of course it's not haunted, even though like he just walked into the kitchen and saw a dead girl, you know, like.
Yeah.
So that's one of my least favorite tropes in horror movies is just if there is overwhelming evidence, like it takes you out of the movie because these characters are not acting realistically. And that is the vibe I got from this moment with Mac and Alex. And again, you know, you can almost kind of excuse Alex's, like maybe that's a writer's decision. But for Mac, what more do you need?
And supposedly what we find out in the next scene is that it's because Mac knows the secrets here that Alex has been hiding. So Tony goes outside. Mac follows him and basically tries to get him to stay. He basically revealed a secret that we don't explicitly get to hear. We've kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, and that secret being that they're all out of money.
Yeah, and Tony is wondering, so what we hear is like the tail end of that conversation. They decided to pick up the camera and start recording for some reason. Tony is wondering why Alex didn't tell them. He says he feels betrayed and that Alex screwed them. So I wrote at this point, it feels like it's something financial, but also apparently the second one alludes to the fact that Alex already knew about it. So it's kind of like a combination of things that might be being told to Tony right now. That like, yes, Alex does know everything, and also we have no money. Tony does eventually say that he'll stay.
Yeah, so he says, yeah, I can't leave. And then you said, quote, you could though. You literally could. Like for real. There's no reason to stay. End quote.
I stand by. But according to Reddit, in a Q&A, the director said that the reason is financial and that there was another scene to further clarify it, but it was cut. However, clues remain. The fact that they moved out from New York City isn't actually just to change up things for fun, and the reason why they're staying at the house instead of at a hotel, and also probably why they don't have more complicated props. They just have these like kind of standard dummies.
And why they only have 3 actors.
Yeah, right. So I thought the scene was kind of sweet, even though I also thought it was confusing and weird. Alex doesn't deserve such good friends. Diane, the interviewer. So Diane, the interviewer, she's kind of been the person behind the camera this whole time, like the documentary, the whole aspect of it.
We haven't talked about her in a while, but she's the person in the beginning of the movie who's trying to go into the hotel, and she's the one interviewing Sarah.
Yeah, she's interviewing Sarah. She's asked the author questions, the journalist questions. She's behind the whole thing. She asked Sarah about opening night and if anything seemed like there was, you know, any technical issues or if anything was wrong. She says no, and they were prepared. She asks if Alex was of sound mind, and Sarah says, "What do you mean?" So Diane clarifies, asking if Alex was fit to run the event or if there was anything on management's end that could have caused the tragedy. Sarah says that he was the same as always and did a great job rallying everyone. Next, she asks Sarah why she didn't leave, which is a great and valid question. Sarah says that Alex wasn't going to leave the house, so what was I supposed to do? The documentary then interviews some survivors. One was the video that we saw from YouTube with the clown. It was like a girl who was running that video, and she's the one who was like, well, I thought the clown was kind of odd that he was like running against traffic. And that once she reached the bottom of the steps, she couldn't move. No one could. And it was because everyone already there was trying to get out. Melissa, the damsel in distress actress, asks about Paul. So back to the found footage. She's like, where's Paul been? As they're kind of talking about opening night and getting started. Alex lies and says, oh, he's fine. You know, why would you even ask? He's just under the weather. So he's so defensive anytime anyone asks anything. Still no Sarah. Tony is manning the camera again. Tony apologizes to Alex for his blow up. He then goes into Paul's room, who is in his bed facing away from the door. He tries to get him to get up, but he doesn't even acknowledge him. It's opening night and we see the crowd waiting outside in a line. Joey the clown is perched between the fake, not fake clowns.
Yeah, and the costume that Joey is wearing is the same clown costume that has been tormenting this whole movie.
It is?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that's the same outfit that, that creepy clown that just keeps popping up everywhere.
Melissa is attached to the ceiling, so she's chained to the ceiling.
And so again, they needed to have a security guard down here because this girl is chained to the wall and they couldn't get cameras in there. Mm-hmm. Could they have also simply not chained her to the wall? Could they have used fake cuffs with some sort of release, maybe?
Right.
Like,
That's what I was just going to say.
there is no reason to legitimately shackle this poor girl to a
I'm
wall.
not being paid enough for that. Like, there's no way they're paying Melissa enough to be physically chained to something to where if someone does make her uncomfortable, she can't defend herself in any way. Like, that's so illegal. Just illegal, probably. It's fine. I'm sure she'll be fine. She's just in the basement where everything happens. She'll be fine.
I'm pretty sure there's a quick shot of her later, still chained to the wall, but like her bottom half is missing.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very quick, and it might not have been what it was, but like that, I
figured
that's
she was
what I
just
thought I saw.
taken into the wall or whatever.
Well, they probably tried to, but her top half wouldn't come off the wall.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We have fun here.
Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, Tony manning the camera. At first I was like, oh, cool. She's just in this like negligee. But that was actually like a jacket that he then unzips. And now she's just in a bra and panties because that's what she needs to be wearing.
Yeah, and it's cool because if she wants to zip back up, her hands are chained to the wall, and she can't.
Yeah. It's great.
So this doesn't get creepy fast.
Tony and Alex are in this like makeshift command room. I think, are they in the attic? And that's why we find Alex in there later.
No, I don't think it's in the attic. I think it's some little side room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's where they can see everything happening on the cameras. And, you know, everyone has walkie-talkies. Tony says that Paul is still sleeping and it's creepy. Alex says it's not creepy, it's annoying. And that's because he's an asshole. The walkie-talkies are barely working, so we're off to a great start.
Wait, just to clarify, Alex says it's not creepy, it's annoying. You added, that's because he's an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
That's you saying that about
Alex is an asshole.
Alex was not saying that about Paul.
Yeah.
I just felt like that needed to be clarified.
They knew. So the walkie-talkies are barely working. We see footage that we already saw, basically from the people waiting in line. And I'm just wondering, like, who is standing in line and records that? Is that what Gen Z is doing now? They're recording waiting in line? That seems silly.
Okay, boomer.
I wrote, just experience what you're experiencing.
You could not be more of a boomer. Oh my God.
Sarah's back. She tells Mac that she saw Paul, or she thinks she saw Paul, and that he looked at her. So 2 minutes ago, Paul was just like catatonic in bed, and now Sarah thinks she might have seen him. Back to the attendees. They're in the open take a drink every time I say open house. They're in the haunted house. So again, this is the YouTube footage that we're kind of seeing again, intertwined. So we see the clown, the bodyguard, run the opposite direction of everybody while they're just kind of checking things out. So they see this happening on camera. They're like, where's the clown going? Mac tells Sarah to run inside to see what happened. So her running through is the thing that makes one of the patrons say, is that supposed to happen? So again, we kind of already saw this, and now we're piecing it together with what's happening on the cruise side. While they're walking through the dining area, we see Paul sitting at one of the tables. So again, same footage, but we didn't see this last time.
Yeah, and it was a very quick shot. Like, they pan over the entire dining area, and actually we had to pause it and go back because I was like, is that Paul right there?
Yeah, he's sitting like a prop, basically. Which I'm sure is what everyone thought walking by, if they even saw him.
Yeah, it's a good shot.
But then as the camera kind of pans around again, like the person walked through the dining room and then turned around to kind of look at it again, Paul's gone. So he's not there.
Oh my God.
In the basement, Melissa is screaming and she keeps saying, this isn't part of the show, please help, which is just like so sad. She's begging all of these people to help her.
So here's how it goes in my imagination, right? The portal is on like the wall. Like, so she's chained to a wall. There is a wall that is like perpendicular to her.
Yeah.
And that is the wall where there is a pentagram drawn on. In my mind, that's where the portal is.
Yeah.
And it's trying to like suck her in, and she's like hanging by her wrists from this wall and like lifted into the air and like being pulled towards that portal, but she's like being stretched and pulled.
Yeah.
Because it's trying to get her in the portal, but she's chained to the wall. That's when she's screaming for help. And when eventually the lower half of her body separates from the upper half of her body. that's when everybody loses their shit.
Yeah, that makes actual perfect sense. And that's probably what's like in those 8 minutes in the director's cut.
Yeah, I have no idea. And I mean, if, if anybody knows better, definitely correct me. But that's just that's my headcanon for this.
And down there too are the figures, the hooded figures. So everyone is just thinking this is part of the show. They're approaching her very slowly, but this time there's multiples of them. We've only ever seen one at a time so far. There's like 4 of them. So like you just said, this is where the portal opens in the director's cut that kind of pulls the whole story together. The original owner, Andrew Tully, who was believed to be a cult leader, was attempting to open some kind of portal. It's clear he was able to do that, and it's also opened the door to some bad characters as well. Again, Melissa's pleading for help, but eventually everyone just starts running out. The patron holding the camera is like attacked, I think, and we get a close-up of a demon, I think. Do you remember this?
I remember, and I couldn't tell you what it was.
So much is happening.
Yeah, and it's, and this kind of goes back to the strobe thing I was saying, where they've kind of embraced the less is more thing here. Like, they kind of show you vague things, and they let your mind fill in the rest.
Right.
Which, obviously there is a line where that just becomes lazy, but when it's done right is more effective than showing something.
Yeah, because it really just shows what would really be happening, which is absolute chaos.
Yeah, and that's
you're not going to be able to
thing.
make out anything.
That's the thing, is like watching these YouTube videos or, fake YouTube videos, it felt like watching a YouTube video. It was
not in a YouTube video I'm watching.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Mac has now come down and he's started to guide people out. Like, they don't quite know, I guess, what's happening, but they know it's not supposed to be happening. So Mac is guiding everyone out, and he gets out most of them, but that door, the same door I think that Paul tried to get out earlier when he was doing the test run, slams shut and like can't be opened. So he bangs on it, and then he turns around and looks at these people, these like stragglers, and he's like, okay, there's another way we can go, and he like goes that way. He directs Tony to the basement, I guess, to get Melissa, but the basement door slams shut and can't be opened. Tony and Sarah run into each other, and he tells her to go up to the attic. That's where they find Alex hanging on that chain that we saw at the beginning. He's not good. The hooded ghosts are there as well.
Yeah, at this point, when she gets up there, I believe he's like alive and he's like struggling while he's hanging.
They attack, though. The camera falls, and the angle that we see through the camera is just Alex's hanging feet. Sarah, who doesn't seem like she should have been able to be alive at this point, tells Diane that she came down the stairs as the police were arriving. Diane asks, so nothing happened on the way down? You just left? And she says yes. Then Diane asks how it was kept from the public for so long. She doesn't answer, and instead says she's feeling tired. She needs to take off the mic, and she says, okay, I just need a couple hours, but you can find me in room 2C. This establishes that the whole interview has been happening at a hotel, but I immediately was like, questioning, why are we saying so specifically the room number? What does that mean? What is going on? What's happening? Was that for you the first time you saw it?
I don't remember.
Was the radar going off? Beep, 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 beep. Why is this happening?
Probably. I think at this point I definitely pieced together, like, Sarah was like, this girl's a ghost or a demon or a ghost demon.
I did not figure that out. Anyway, what happens next is the weirdest part, which really took me out of it. And that is when she says, Sarah, she encourages them to go to the house to see what's inside. Diane says that they can't get in, and so Sarah's like, is that the only thing holding you back? You should really try and see it. That makes zero fucking sense.
What do you mean?
If you have been so deeply traumatized by these events, you've theoretically lost all of your friends, your entire company, your whole life. Something awful happened there. You know what happened there. Why would you be encouraging anyone to go there?
Well, because it's not her.
I know, but like, it just, is that supposed to be like a beep, beep, beep for us? Or like,
absolutely.
What? It just doesn't make sense.
So what this Sarah is. So, I mean, based on what we've seen and what we see after this, Sarah's dead. Sarah's dead. Full stop. There's no way around that. And this is a presence, an entity from the house that is trying to draw in more victims. So that's the ghost, basically, like, just trying to get them to go so the ghost can also feast on them.
So you could make the argument for in part 2 where they suggest that like Alex was pulled to the house, that like maybe someone came and was like,
yeah,
could have been Andrew Tully, like, hey, come go do business
100%.
here.
Yeah, and
Ooh.
there's a similar character in the second one as well that, again, is just kind of his whole purpose is to draw people to the house.
Okay. All right. Once Sarah leaves, Diane talks to her team and she's like really excited. She wants to go do it. Her people are less than excited and she taunts them. She says, "What are you afraid of? Ghosts?" Yeah, bitch. Did you not just hear everything that this woman just said? Yeah, I'm afraid of ghosts.
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
She convinces them though, and as they leave the hotel, they stop at the front desk to ask, just to say, hey, if the woman in 2C is looking for them, tell her that we went to the house. And the front desk girl is like, our rooms don't have letters. And there's also no one here with that name. Unfazed. They're fine.
And that for me was a moment where I was like, nope, that's it. This is similar to the clown where it's like, I understand the reporter's desire to want to go in the house. Because again, like if you hadn't seen or experienced any of this firsthand, you're skeptical, right? If somebody's lying about something was covered up, I get wanting to go there. But that part right there when, it's like, my granddaughter's been dead for 70 years. Like, no, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. The screen goes black and the words appear on the screen that say while they were at the house, someone else on the team watched the footage that Sarah gave them. And what they saw was inexplainable or unexplainable.
Unexplainable.
Yeah. The footage begins. And so we're back now to the found footage. And it's still for a while. You can't really make out where it is or what we're looking at. Because I remember asking, like, what are we looking at right now? And you were like, I think we're not supposed to know what we're looking at.
You were so agitated.
Yeah. Sarah starts whimpering and walking around to get out. She picks up the camera, obviously. There's a hooded figure in the kitchen. And while she gasps, it's not quite matching. So maybe, did she even see it? I don't know. She just simply goes, and like, how are you not screaming at the top of your fucking lungs? She comes across Paul in the hallway and is so relieved to see him. It was honestly so sweet. She drops the camera, hugs him, but he doesn't hug her back. When they break apart, he picks up the camera and he kills her. I think based on how we see her later, I think he slashes her across the face.
No, I could be wrong, but I thought he beat her with the camera.
Well, he does that after.
Oh.
Because she has like a cut like this. So I thought he, like this across your mouth.
Yeah,
is
I was about to say,
demonstrating.
cut like what?
Audio medium. So I thought he slashed her, which made her fall down, obviously. And then he just like beats the shit out of her, like kicking her and stuff. And he's like holding the camera.
Yeah. And then after that, you see Paul pick up a piece of glass.
Well, yeah. So, he kicks her. What I was just wanting to add to that was he kicks her until you can see the blood on his face. So that's how badly he beats her. And then he picks up the same, like a piece of glass or something, and just slashes his own throat, which is the body that the journalist referenced earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a good scene. Like, obviously, it's not pleasant, but it is well done. It doesn't feel too much. It doesn't feel cheesy. It doesn't feel obviously fake. Like, this is just a really good, effective scare.
It's actually not even gross. It's just like a death scene. He's like gurgling on blood, but the camera is almost like on the, like if you think about a hallway and how wide a hallway is, think of Paul being against one wall as he kind of collapses down, and the camera is just on the floor on the other side of the wall. So only that far apart, but like you're not seeing a close up of like the slash in his throat or anything gross like that. He's just dying and choking on his own blood. And then meanwhile, you can also see part of Sarah's body, at least. She just gets magically dragged away. So now we kind of see the beginning again, which is Sarah, Diane, walking into the house and bringing her camera guy in with her, which is like one of the very first scenes we saw at the beginning. And they're going through the house, looking at the floor, which we saw at the beginning, which was a big blood stain. Obviously, that's Paul and Sarah. And then we also see arms, seemingly, or, a dragged blood stain that ends at the wall. That's Sarah being dragged into the wall. She is fascinated. Diane is simply just fascinated by everything that she sees. They go into the basement. There's blood, but the camera guy pretty quickly makes her leave the basement.
Yeah, so the camera guy is there with her, but he is trying desperately to be her voice of reason throughout
Yeah, like,
this
please,
entire
let's
thing.
just leave.
He's like, what? Why do you want to? Can we just get the fuck out? What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah. A very kind of touching moment as they're going through these various spots in the house. Like she walks by the bar area and like the wine area. We get flashbacks to the team, the all these friends like having fun at those spots, and it made me really sad. Actually, it was just this out of place, touching scene, but it was really nice.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like this is a word I use a lot in this podcast, and I don't mean to overuse it, but it's effective.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is, they're trying to make you feel sad for, the loss that these characters experience, and you do. Like, even though we actively hated most of those characters, and even though at least one of them was a terrible actor, like, you still are like, man, that's sad.
Yeah.
And that's just, I feel like it sums up this movie really well, in that there are certain elements that if you kind of isolate those elements and look at them by themselves, you're like, wow, that's not really well done. But overall, it's just so effective.
Yeah. Diane's cell phone rings and she's like, oh, it's Mitchell. I'll call him back later. Mitchell, we don't know who he is, but we know he's definitely the guy who just watched the footage and is like wanting to tell them to get the fuck out of that house because Sarah is dead, despite having spoken to Sarah for I don't know how many hours.
But if she doesn't want to answer, it's her funeral.
They go upstairs. By the way, everything was left exactly as it happened, which is so weird to me that they just left blood stains. Like, it's a crime scene and we just left it like that.
I mean, to be fair, who's going to volunteer to go in there and clean that shit up?
It's someone's job. I don't know. They come across a closed door that says 2C, and Diane is ecstatic. She's like, oh my God, it's 2C. It's what she said. She wanted us to come here. This is honestly just another, I would be like, bye. I would leave Diane. As the cameraman, I would be like, bye.
Yeah, I mean, the second she wanted to go in the basement, I'd be like, okay, well, here's the camera. This is the off button.
Yeah.
I'll see you back at the van.
And he's begging her. He's like, do not turn that knob. Please, Diane, do not. And she's like, fuck you, I am. And she turns that knob and goes in. Sarah is on the bed with her back to the door. She's kind of like looking out the window. And Diane is like, Sarah, honey, are you okay? Sarah turns her head around sharply. Her face is bloody. And suddenly the hooded figures are next to her. Sarah and the camera guy are screaming. The camera cuts.
You mean Diane and the camera guy?
Yeah, sorry. Diane and the camera guy are screaming. The camera cuts. It turns on again, and it's just the floor of the room empty. And we hear that same Meow Mix song playing downstairs.
I want chicken.
Okay, now here's the thing that doesn't make sense. How are we seeing this? Because now it's found footage within found footage.
Well, somebody found that footage.
Just put the whole thing together still.
Well, I think, the idea is for the documentary piece at the end, this scene at the end, it's not, you're not seeing it as something that somebody's found. You're just supposed to be seeing that as it unfolds. You're just seeing it through the lens of the cameraman. So that's more like a traditional movie where you're seeing the action as it unfolds. We just happen to be seeing it through a camera.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I looked at it.
All right.
That was a big shrug. Again, audio medium.
Yeah, it was a big shrug.
Just a big, yeah, okay.
Scores. What was your jump score?
My jump score. This is like a solid 8. This whole movie is a solid 8 for me. There are good, effective scares in this movie. I mean, what else can I say?
A 9.
Yeah.
I didn't want to give it a 10. I don't know what's going to be a 10. But this was maybe even a 9.5. I mean, that one particular scene that I couldn't watch.
Yeah, again, this is the most rattled I've seen you during a movie.
Nightlight.
Probably like a good 8 as well. I mean, the clowns, the robed figures, it's all just very unsettling.
I gave it a 5 for my Nightlight.
Really?
Yeah, because I wasn't as scared once it was gone as I thought it would be. Like I've talked about, I'm scared, and that's reflected in my Scared a Cat score. Like, I'm scared talking about various elements, but ultimately, I just can't explain it. It wasn't like a leftover scare as much as I anticipated it to be. I never want to see it again, ever, ever, ever. I don't like talking about it, but like that leftover thing wasn't as strong as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely haven't been any nights where you're like, you need to be in this room with me right now because I'm scared, which has happened before.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you give your horror buff score?
Also an 8, high 8, maybe like a third or a half through the movie. I was kind of like a little like, man, maybe this wasn't as good as I remembered it. But the last act of this movie, just so much happens and it's done very well. And they're just solid scares. And, you know, there are a lot of original things. And then the things that aren't so original are still done very well. And I mean, as I'm saying, an 8 doesn't even feel high enough. Like I maybe even 9. But if you like found footage movies, you're going to be hard pressed to, you know, ask for more.
My 2 scores to kind of finalize it are Scaredy Cat and Neophyte. And I know if you listen every week, you know what these scores reflect. But I feel like it's almost more complicated when I didn't like the movie, because me not liking the movie doesn't indicate that it's a bad film. It means that it was probably a very effective film, and I hate everything about it because I don't like scary movies.
Yeah, and I mean,
this is very complicated.
And to you know, speak on the quality of the film a little bit, I think, you know, it did a good job in eliciting emotions from you. You know, it made you dislike Alex, it made you like Paul, it made you feel sad for these people, even though you fucking hated half of them. You know?
So that being said, my Scaredy Cat score is a 7, which means I was quite scared through the whole thing. Like, I was scared writing it. Probably should list it as an 8. I don't really remember why I put 7. I put that score down like a few days ago. So 7, 8, comfortably, that's the Scaredy Cat. Neophyte score, which I wrote a 4. Again, it's not a bad film, but I hated it. And there were pieces that I appreciate about it. Again, we've said the word effective a million times. It clearly was. And that's my score.
All right.
Okay, so our next movie is Midsummer.
Yeah.
Which I'm very not afraid to watch, but I'm very much like, is this going to be like Oculus? Is this going to be like The Lodge, where I'm just uncomfortable and sad?
I don't know if I would compare it to those two. It's definitely, at least for me. So I haven't seen this since I saw it in the theater, so it's been a couple years. But for me, this movie wasn't even super scary. So for anybody who isn't familiar with Midsummer, it was directed by Ari Aster, who also made Hereditary, which for me was one of the most disturbing experiences ever. Like, just watching Hereditary made me incredibly uncomfortable. And so going into Midsummer, I was like excited, but I was also like nervous. Like, I was like, am I going to be unhappy watching this? And Midsummer didn't give me, there's definitely a lot of uncomfortableness. You know, it's surreal. Like, you're watching it and you're like, what is going on here? But there's not a lot of straight up horror in the way that there are in a lot of movies that we've watched. So I think it's going to be a movie that you appreciate. I think you'll like it as a movie, but I also don't think you'll want to watch it again because it will make you uncomfortable.
Okay. It's got to be brighter than Hereditary, right? I mean,
it's very bright. It's incredibly bright. Yeah.
All right. So make sure you watch that for our next episode. Thanks for listening to Go a Little Mad. Please be sure to follow or subscribe to us on your favorite pod platform and like us on Instagram and Facebook at Go a Little Mad Pod. Visit goalittlemadpod.com to continue the conversation about each episode, and you can help us spread the word with a quick review and 5-star rating, or grab some merch from our TeePublic site. Your sharing makes all the difference.
And if anybody's still listening, if you have any requests, DM us on Instagram. So Urban Legend, which was our last episode, has been one of our more successful episodes. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. And that was because somebody wrote us and asked us to do the movie. I don't know that we would have thought of it or done it without that prompt. So, you know, if there are any movies that you want to see us talk about, shoot us a DM. Let us know.
Yeah.
Or email us, goalittlemadpod@gmail.com. Let me know what I can do for you.